In this video, I'll go through how I made this sculpture that is probably the most complex shape I've ever carved out of a single piece of wood. I also don't have a workshop and my tools are pretty basic, so I'll try my best to share some ways to get around having limited resources. With anything that requires a composition of more intricate shapes and proportions, I always make a sketch first and then sometimes even use it like this to trace the outlines onto the wood. It really speeds up the process as I can then more confidently remove the excess wood. Splitting wood is the fastest way to do that with hand tools, and I like to use sawing in combination with splitting to create what are essentially these big stop cuts. I also use the hand saw on its own to remove chunks that can't be split off due to the wood grain direction. A handsaw can also sometimes be used like this, which is similar to how wood is made rounder, for example with a chainsaw. One of the most important things when working with limited tools is the choice of wood. For this one I used my typical Norway spruce, which is very soft, but even with this it took me about 20 hours spread over 2 consecutive days. And I mean, it's my own fault for making this in such a short span of time, but even with soft wood, the MCP joints, so these knuckle joints on my knife hand, were hurting quite a bit after both days. With harder wood, this project would have been much more strenuous and could have taken multiple days or even a couple of weeks. So if you want to use harder types of wood, then power tools or even just a bunch of larger chisels for the initial rough shaping make the process much more manageable compared to relying heavily on knives. Then I guess the main idea I use with projects like this is the same as if I had all the tools and machines in the world. I use the easiest way first. A lot of people use a bandsaw, but I replace that with the splitting and sawing I already talked about. But then when I get to places where the saw can't reach very well, I still use it as far as it goes and only then switch to a knife. And as you can see, this way I'm then able to chip off quite large pieces with ease. I also used a variety of other tools, of which this drill was the most important one, because otherwise cutting all the way through would have taken ages. But then after drilling a hole, it's quite easy to modify its edges. I made the eyes similarly to what I've done a couple times before, so just by cutting the edges with the tip of the blade, making a few stop cuts and then rounding the edges of the eye. These small chisels were also very helpful since I was struggling to make clean cuts with a knife in these awkwardly small places. Then I just coated the piece with some mineral oil to bring out the color and make the surface look a little bit nicer.